Hi and welcome back to Tie TV. I'm Daniel Bergman. The beard still hasn't come back, but I'm working on it. Now and today I thought I would show you quite an awesome pattern. It's not really a pattern of myself. It's a great guy, English dude called Martin Schmidt, who has designed this fly. It's called the Martin's Minnow, and we actually used this as long as we had any during Perch Pro, and also during the training. It's a real good fish catcher, tied sort of as a jig imitation, so to speak. I altered some stuff from the original pattern that Martin ties, and I sort of changed all the materials just to customize it a little bit and get it a bit softer. Moves great in the water. And another great thing with this fly is that it rides with hook point up, so you can really bounce it off the bottom. Quite heavy head with a 4mm tungsten bead. Of course, here you can vary different weights, etc. And the color scheme I've chosen for this fly is from the now more famous jig that Stockholm's Fiske used during Perch Pro 2 years ago, the Red Ghost. Try to make it justice. Okay, let's get started. The hook I'm using for this pattern is a partridge attitude streamer in size 2 or 1. The thing is that this is a normal straight streamer hook, but I want to bend in this one. Partridge will actually come out with a pre-made hook, just the way I like it, a little bit later on this year. But what I do now is I take the hook, close my pliers approximately 4mm up on the hook shank from the eye, and I just give it a little bend. Something like that. So I get an angle on the hook shank, just like this. Of course, this it weakens the hook a little bit, but I'm not gonna fish for tuna with this fly, so really doesn't matter. Oh, forgot one thing. We need to place the 4mm bead there first before we start tying. So I take a black one just to match the color scheme. Thread it over the hook and let it slide down in the little bend I made up there. Here we go. Nice and secure. Okay, for thread you can more or less use anything you like or prefer, as long as it's not too thin and weak. Right now I'm using the UTC 140 black, but you can go for like power thread from Techstream or whatever you like. And to begin with, I start filling up the hole a little bit that's in the tungsten head, just by winding the thread a couple of turns closest to the bead. And when that's done, I just continue rearwards on the hook until I come to the point where the hook starts to bend. On this hook, it's more or less just above the barb of the hook. Okay. For tail, I'm going to use a Flashabou from Hedron that's called Polar Flash. It's sort of a really cool mix between like a waffled Flashabou and some synthetic fibers. It's really soft and it swims really great in the water. I don't want too much of this, So I take up a small bundle, like, I don't know, what can this be, like 10 strands or something. Cut it up, cut it off at the top. And look at it and see, yeah, that looks just about right. The color is on this one, it's called opal. Okay, now I turn the whole thing upside down. And I take the Flashabou and I sort of fold it in underneath the thread. Tie one more turn. And make sure I get the Flashabou on both sides of the hook shank now. And a few wraps backwards and sort of lock it in place. That's about it. And this is just to give this little extra movement in the back of the fly, since I'll be fishing it sort of jigging. Okay, I go forward a little bit with the thread, and then we're gonna start to build the body of the fly, and more or less the whole rest of the fly is made up by one material, and that's the new Predator dubbing from Fly Dressing. I start with the white one that also incorporates some bluish Flashabou that imitates the pearl in the Red Ghost quite well. What I do now is tie it on the upper side of the hook. Something like that. And then I take the fibers pointing forward and divide them in two halves and pull them down on each side of the hook, and folding them backwards and secure them. There we go. What's so nice about this dubbing compared to, for example, laser dub from Hairline is that it's like 4 times the length. It's a really long dubbing. It's excellent for building a bit bigger baitfish patterns. And then I continue doing the same a little bit in front of the first bunch, and with a little bit I mean like 3 to 4 millimeters. Divide it in two and fold it backwards on the underside. Okay, same thing again. Up a little bit too much. And while I progress forwards, I'm taking a little bit thicker clumps for every bunch I tie in, just to give a nice taper, like a drop-shaped taper to the fly. Okay, one more. A little bit heavier. Cool. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, so now I'm gonna change color from the white to a more grayish color. This is the, can't really remember the name, but I think it's shad gray. Otherwise the color in the recipe for the fly will be correct. Anyway, so check that out. Okay, this is a mix between gray, white, and some pearl flashabou. And what I'm gonna do now, not to cover the whole fly, because if you have a look at the jig once more, the tail is white and pearlish or transparent. I'm gonna divide this one in two, and then I just rip it apart, quite easy. And not to get like this really sharp edges, I just taper it a little bit between my fingers. Okay. Now we got twice the length and the double amount of material. Make sure you got a nice taper. Place it on top, same way as before. And divide the fibers in equally large clumps. And fold it backwards and tie it down. One more. A little bit heavier. Quite a repetitive process, this. Cool. Now we're starting to get quite close to the tungsten bead. When I'm done with this gray color here, like now, just make sure we got it nicely spread around the fly. That's good. I'm gonna take some black, since the color on the jig is black and everybody knows that the jig is working. We try to do that as close to the real thing as possible. Okay. The first clump I tie in just on the upper side of the hook, or actually the underside of the hook, but my upper side. There we go. And before I fold this backwards, I'm gonna tie in the red belly of the fly. And of course, this is fluorescent red, because you can't catch fish without fluorescent colors. Or can you? I'm not willing to take a chance. Okay, I turn the hook around and try not to mix up the black. Hold the dubbing quite well spread over the underside of the fly. Tie it in with a couple of hard turns. And then I start with folding the red backwards, tying it down, and folding the black on top backwards. Cool. And to finish it all off, I'm gonna do a shorter portion of the black again. Rip it apart, lay the two clumps together, Make sure they're sort of the same length and well tapered in both ends. And then I do the opposite as I did before. I start with the underside. Tie it in very widely so it's spread well around the whole, or at least half the part of the fly. The underside is covered with black. And then I take the black pointing forward and fold it to cover up the rest that's not covered in black. That's perfect. Sort of. That's perfect. Okay, we're sort of done with the tying part of the fly now. So what I do now is take some Sappa Gap brushable glue. It's just super glue. Brush some on the thread. Make sure your bobbin is not hanging just underneath it, because that can complicate things and cost you a bobbin. And then I just whip finish as close to the head as possible. Cut off the thread. Okay, this looks like a big brush, or like a big furry bally thing of dubbing. We need to do something about that. Then we take the brush and we sort of give it a good thorough brush through, and that spreads the fibers out very evenly, and tangled up fibers are ripped off. We get a nice taper and a really nice shape to the fly, very Minnow-like. Okay, but it's not really done. You could actually fish it like this if you want to, but that's the same thing goes for eyes as with fluorescent colors. I wouldn't fish a baitfish pattern without eyes, at least not with confidence. Okay, so I take 5.5mm epoxy eyes. These are the fluor red epoxy eyes from Fly Dressing. And I just add a small drop of glue on the back of this, sort of covering the pupil of the fly. And then I gently place the eye just behind, as close to the bead as you can come. And I don't want it totally centered over the hook eye or the hook shank. I sort of push it a little bit towards the under part of the fly. So it's not, you don't have the hook shank going straight through the pupil underneath here. It's sort of on the upper part of the eye. And the super glue really attaches to this dubbing material really well. So I do the same thing again on the other side of the fly, without gluing my fingers. It's stuck, hopefully. Cool. Once again, as close as the bead as possible. Okay, and then I gently squeeze the eyes while the super glue dries. Cool. Now they're stuck. And to add just a little bit of extra weight. You could do this with epoxy if you want. It would make for a little bit more durable fly. But as I've said before, perch flies that are supposed to be fished close to the bottom, well, I really don't feel like spending too much time messing around with them, because I lose a lot of them. Okay, what I do now is I pinch the fibers down a little bit, take my Deer Creek UV resin and carefully apply it on the between the eyes of the fly, and almost coming up on the bead, or I actually go up with the resin a little bit on top of the bead, so everything sort of melts together, and then I cure it with the UV light. Cool. Then I do the same procedure on the underside. That should be cured. Now I'm using the fine version of the Deer Creek UV resin, so I need to do one more layer to get a nice and shiny head. One funny thing with this resin is that it's actually also fluorescent. Quite nice. See-through fluorescent. Same thing on the top. Cool. Now I'm sort of all done, but the whole fly is a little bit too long as it is now. There's a big chance that the perch will probably just nibble in the back of it and not get stuck. This could be a good size for really big perch, but if you want to catch more perch, I would trim it down. And what I do then is I take my sharp scissors and I sort of trim while pulling backwards of the fly, just sort of tapering it down nice and easily. You can also pull it a little bit over the dubbing fibers until I have a length that I'm happy with. So here we have the predator dubbing version of the Martin's Minnow Red Ghost style. So this fly is a really good perch fly. I would say sometimes even better than the Magic Minnow, because it's heavier and it rides hook point up, and when you actually bounce it on the bottom, it stands like this, since we got quite buoyant materials in the back. So while dropping it on the bottom, it will stand like this. Can be really effective just to let it rest there. Compare it to the jig. It's quite similar. Same color scheme, same key points with the color and the red belly. Nice eyes and a black back. This will catch a lot of perch, I can promise you. Probably more than this one. Or, yeah, more. Definitely. Great style of pattern. You can of course tie it in as many color combos as you like. I've done a couple of different ones. This is a like green, yellow, blackish one with a green flash tail, some white and pink, pink and green. You can more or less take a color chart from any jig manufacturer and just copy on, and you get some nice perch flies. Quite easy to tie, quite fast to tie when you get the hang of it, so you can sort of mass produce a couple of them. If you got a lot of logs in the water you're fishing, you will need it, definitely. But if you're fishing like normal hard bottom with a rocky bottom, you won't lose as many flies. So, thanks for watching. Make sure to check out all the other cool Tie TVs we have made. Until we meet again, take care and chili fishing.